So why should we trust the Bible? Number one, the amount of manuscripts. If you look at just the New Testament alone, we have thousands of manuscripts from less than 100 years away, which blows out of the water the next historical document that we've ever had. You'd have tatters, maybe a few dozen from many years beyond for a lot of Greek manuscripts that we take as exactly how they were written before. And yet we so easily question the Bible, which has thousands of manuscripts from within hundreds of years of the date of which they're writing about. Second, the archaeological evidence. There are many different sites which prove that the Bible's history is true. And there were many things that were doubted, such as the destruction of Jericho. And as it's been excavated, they have seen that, just as was talked about in the Bible, well before anybody had been digging at the base of Jericho, that the walls outside Jericho, they had fallen outwards, and then the city had been burned, just as it was described in Genesis. Third, the historical accuracy, which ties into the archaeological accuracy, but the fact that Luke, one of the writers, he wrote 2 of the books of the New Testament, both the Gospel of Luke and the account of Acts, which is kind of the history of the early church. It's a very historical book in the Bible. He was a historian and a doctor, so he was well educated. He accounted things very well. It ties in with, if you look back, it ties into archaeology very well. So we know that historically it's correct. You also have, especially around the New Testament time, you have other people, you have other historians like Josephus, who was not a Christian. You have different Roman contacts when you read some of the letters of Romans near that time that speak of some of the events of the early church that are talking about the Bible, of Jesus. Somebody like Pilate, who they weren't sure if he was real, but then they found out that they found stuff that proved that he was real, which the Bible had already said before there was any proof that he was a person. Same with King David. For a while they said he was fictitious, but after more study, they have found boulders with transcriptions talking about the house of King David. And fourth, inspiration. Now, this is not going to be very convincing to most of the secular audience, those who think the Bible is just some fictitious book written by some men. Whether they agree with the other 3, they may not think it has any real authority because they don't believe in inspiration. But we, as believers, we know that it has authority because it was inspired by the Spirit of God, that He inspired men to write it down. And I think a fascinating thing about this is that even though it was many men, it creates a coherent story over thousands of years. This was a book written over thousands of years. It creates one coherent storyline of the fall of man and the redemption of man. Doesn't contradict itself. You might see contradictions, but if you really study them, you realize they're not, and they're a flaw in our own thinking. And I'd love to get to that more. If any of y'all have some different apparent contradictions that y'all like to talk about, feel free to put them in the comments, and I can make future episodes about those. But the inspiration can give us confidence that it is true for those of us who believe in God, because if you believe in God and the God of the Bible, he speaks of himself as that he does not lie. And so that which is the Bible, we can believe as true. Thanks for watching. I pray that this helps strengthen your confidence in the scriptures. And if you're one who's questioning still the authenticity of the Bible, I hope this helps you as well in that search. Continue seeking after the Lord and reading His Word. If you have any other questions, please put them in the comments, and like I said earlier, I'll try to make future videos about them. Thanks for watching. Peace.